Up next, we're calling it Innovation in a Disruptive Landscape, and it's moderated by Mathew Evins, who is Chairman and CEO of Evins Communication, and it's sponsored by Agilysys. So welcome the panel to the stage. Right on.
Yeah, that's it. We got it right.
Did we get it right? We did.
Yeah,
Right?
we did.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this panel. Thank you to our panelists who will introduce themselves momentarily. So, the subject of today's panel is disruption and innovation, and how you utilize innovation in a disruptive landscape. According to Merriam-Webster, disruption fundamentally can be defined as a disturbance or problem which interrupts an event, an activity, or a process. Radical change to an existing industry or market due to cultural, financial, or geopolitical occurrences. There has never been a time in which the hospitality industry has undergone the degree of disruption that it has because of the pandemic. Whether it's as a result of the economic challenges and uncertainties, guest experiences and guest expectations, labor shortages, service challenges, supply chain issues. So today we have a panel of industry stalwarts who are going to take us through how they've managed during this period of disruption and how they're innovating for the future. So allow me to let them introduce themselves.
So good morning. My name is DeMarinis. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales for Agilysys. I've been in this industry a very long time. I think I've worked steadily in hospitality since I was 16, actually. Ran restaurants. All I ever wanted to do was own restaurants as I was young, going to college. That's all I really ever cared about. But my wife convinced me that it was not a lifestyle that was going to sustain a family and so forth. So I got into the hotel business for a few years. And then in 1995, I stumbled my way into working with a company called Micros, which changed my life forever. And so I've been working with technology and hospitality literally ever since then. I started my career running around Columbus, Ohio with a Micros 2700 under my arm. Those of you that have been around a while probably know what that is. Knocking on doors, trying to get people. Back in those days, it wasn't convincing people to buy one technology versus another. It was convincing them to spend about $30,000 to do something new that they had never done, never heard of before. Very, very challenging environment to sell into at the time. But at any rate, since then I've worked with restaurants, I've worked with restaurant chains, hotels, global brands, regional brands, sports and entertainment. So I've got a very diverse background in hospitality over the years. Today I work for Agilysys as their Senior Vice President of Sales. If you're not familiar with Agilysys, we are a publicly traded global company. We focus 100% on hospitality. In the last 6 years, we've built an entire stack of products that provides an end-to-end suite of technology solutions, really focused on hotel operators, and our sweet spot is very much you all. That mid-high end of the market, that luxury space, multiple amenities, very, very high touch. That's what we do. That's what we do very well. I'm here for Ramesh Srinivasan, our CEO. He came ill a few days ago with COVID, so I'm your plan B for today. Hopefully I perform well for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Good morning. I'm Matt Adams, COO for Evins Hotels. We are a great little independent boutique hotel operator, family owned. We have the storied Lodge at Torrey Pines. For those of you who've spent any time in Southern California would know that property. And we're currently in the process of redeveloping 2 hotels in San Diego's Mission Bay into luxury 5-star products. So very interesting time for our organization. I have worked for COO for Omni Hotels based in Dallas for a period of time. And spent the bulk work of my career at Hyatt Hotels, where I had multiple senior leadership roles at Hyatt corporate office, from all through operations, and probably most notably ran the innovation team for Hyatt Hotels globally, and really began the process of learning how to introduce innovation as a culture into an organization of that size, because innovation used to be, I have a great idea, let's go out and try it, to really formulating the process about how innovation has to work, especially on a large scale organization. So I'm excited to be here to talk to a little bit about what we're up to now, but also what we're seeing in the industry.
Hi there. You can probably tell by my accent right off the bat that I'm not from the US. I am the managing director and co-founder of EQ Group. We are an investor, developer, owner, operator of hotels across Europe, 3 countries right now, the UK, France, and Spain. I started out life in the world of finance, corporate finance, M&A. I've always had a passion for the hotel business, and it started very young, actually, at the age of 11. It's a story. If you can come and talk to me about it afterwards, if you like. But suffice to say, it's always been in my blood. And over time, I've been in this industry now 25, 26 years. Started out in the world of entrepreneurship with a specialty coffee company in the UK, which was not what we used to do because coffee was terrible. Now it's great. And I'm now, as I said, we founded EQ, and we did our first deal in 2015, where we did a DoubleTree by Hilton in London. And since then, we have grown quite a lot. Today, we have over 5,700 rooms across 17 properties in 3 countries. As I said, we're not in the US yet. We are multi-brand, so we have Hiltons, Marriott's, some Choice, we have IHG, we have the whole gamut. But we started to look into the world of independent properties, actually pre-pandemic. We bought 5 hotels in Paris and closed on that deal and started operating it. 814 rooms, 3 Holiday Inns, 2 Courtyards. 1st of November 19. And then we opened a completely independent property, which we did with a JV, with another developer. And that was a 189-key apart hotel in central London, 21 stories, which is unusual for London. We opened our doors February 2020. So you can imagine the timing was pretty much spot on. Anyway, so coming back to the whole, how we got through COVID, which we did, I think the pendulum has swung quite the other way. And the innovation that we have kind of gone through, some of which I'm sure we'll talk about on the panel today, is about redefinition across the board, both in terms of your cost base, which we all had to do necessarily, and hopefully we're now more efficient as a result, but also around the guest experience and what that means. So yeah, looking forward to the panel.
Thank you. So let's get right to it. How has this time of disruption impacted your business? What are the short, medium, and long-term ramifications of that impact? Matt, let's start with you.
Well, first thing is we just heard from the Viceroy CEO. We've seen a tremendous rebound in the luxury market segment, both in terms of our occupancy and rates. So, from that perspective, we really have had to focus. We've had an enjoyment of business rebound very nicely. But as we begin to look forward, we're now starting to look at how has the customer changed and how have their expectations changed. They have gone from very much of in the middle of the pandemic, just happy to have a place to go, happy to have a place to experience, and now have seen a return to expectations in terms of how we're delivering service. Beforehand, we weren't cleaning rooms. We weren't able to clean rooms because we didn't have the staff available to do that. And now how has that returned? But we've also seen a structural change in how they use our hotels. They're spending more time in the hotel. They're spending more time with family. And you can begin to see almost a shift from where customers were going to a place to experience the location, the locale, where you're at, to now they're spending more time focused on who they're with, who they're spending time with, whether it's family, friends, partners. It really is interesting to see that psychological shift. And so we're now starting to begin to focus, how are we looking, when we're looking at renovations, or we're looking at product enhancements, and really focusing in on our experience, we are really spending a lot of time creating spaces. When Bill used the term sanctuary, we're spending time at the Lodge Torrey Pines right now, rebuilding a courtyard, which is a beautiful space for people to enjoy, to really now a gathering space for people to share together. And so we're starting to focus a lot of attention on that experience side of the business that is just beyond the traditional design, service delivery, food and beverage in a property, to how is it helping to facilitate that personal connection, that personal human interaction. I think it's one of the key takeaways that we've had recently.
Imshan.
I would completely agree with what you've just said, Matt. And I think the challenge for us, look, the reality is that every single hotel property is unique. And that's part of the fun and the challenge of that. And really understanding how to optimize the footprint and the real estate to achieve the goals that you've talked about in terms of caring for our guests is what it's all about. I guess the way I would talk about it is in the context of one of the few that we're redeveloping. We have 5 new properties which are coming up on stream between now and call it August of next year. 2 in the UK, 3 in Paris. The one in Paris I can talk about it was a Holiday Inn when we took it over, but the location is incredible. For those of you that know Paris, it's on the left bank, the Rive Gauche as they call it. It's right by Notre Dame, 3 or 4 minutes from Notre Dame. It has an incredible rooftop. Paris is limited, the central Paris is limited to 9 floors, so you have this panoramic view of Paris. We have a courtyard at the back. So it was like understanding, and it was 108 Holiday Inn rooms. So how do you put that and really enhance what the real estate is and give your guests the experience that that location and Paris itself deserves? So the way we did it was, starting from principles, I went out and curated the team. The team and the curation of the team was really, really important. Starting with the branding, because we weren't confined to the boxes of Hilton or Marriott or whatever. We had a blank piece of paper, so we had the branding. Then we went out and found an interior designer who really fit the spirit of the place, and built on that. And then we have curated this incredible thing. It's now called Hotel Dame des Arts, HDDA. You can look it up. In Paris, and as we've sort of gone through the construction period, we went through and we said, okay, what are the people really want? So the way I looked at it was actually, we as human beings, what do? We walk into any place and we feel with our 5 senses. We feel and so the team was tasked and we brainstormed, how is it that we're actually going to curate for each of those 5 senses? So when obviously visually, we've got the design, et cetera, sound, we've curated this incredible, there's an individual who's DJ actually, and is creating some incredible bespoke soundtracks that are relevant to the location. We have curated a scent. So we've gone out to a nose in the south of France, and we've been through a whole thing, and we're creating our own scent that linked to the story. And then taste. I think, what I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And I also know that F&B is a very different business from running a hotel. So we went out and found a guy who actually is young guy, mid-30s, 10 years, passionate experience within F&B. Brought him on board. We had a conversation. The interview was 2.5 hours over a bunch of alcohol. And he said, I got to know you. And I said, that's what I wanted. I wanted to get to know you. And he wanted to go and start his own platform. And I said, look, I know you want to go and start your own platform. The people that are best will always want to do that. But I said, bear with me. I'm going to give you 3 properties straight off the bat. I will launch you. You don't come and work for me. Let's structure a deal where you use this as a platform. You do well, I do well. You win, I win. You go on and do your own thing. We work together. And that's what's happening. And he's curating the bar experience, the food experience. And I've told him that, so far it's been very good. I have done a tasting. We haven't seen what it's going to be like when the guests come in, but I'm very confident that we'll get there. And I said, my challenge now, Mathew is his name, I said, once you actually do this and you're successful and your name's all over the press, the challenge of me will give you another property to keep you. And I think that's the point. It's about people. It's about curating. And there are lots of, it's all about experiences. For me, it's all about, but it's being authentic in those experiences. Really authentic about the location, about why people are there, what is it that they're looking for when they come through the door. And it is redefining luxury to that extent. That's the way I look at it.
Don, this must have been a rather interesting time for Agilysys. Tell us about how this was, how it impacted your business and what you did.
It was good and bad, actually. I mean, when we really knew what we were dealing with COVID, call it May of 2020, would that be the right time? Well, actually, in April, we thought this was like a 30-day thing. And then when we realized that this was going to go on for a period of time, we did the same thing you all did. We kind of battened down the hatches. We reduced our head count, started furloughing employees. Obviously, as I said earlier, we're a hospitality-focused company, and our main sectors are hotels, gaming, cruise, and contract food service, all of which were essentially shut down for a long period of time. So financially, it was very challenging. But our very first board meeting after COVID became a known, sustained pandemic, the board told us to execute our long-term development strategy at a much more aggressive pace. In other words, go hire more developers, build more product, get where you wanted to be in 2028 by 2022, 23. So what we had set off to do about 6 years ago was develop an end-to-end suite of products that essentially helped you all deliver what you just talked about. Very comprehensive. Our feeling is if there's a place for technology that enables operators to help their staff, their guests, experience the hotel in the way that they want, drive that guest experience, we want to provide that. We believe that when you have more of a single vendor solution, well integrated, products talk to one another, you can create this single guest profile. We talked about this a bit in the kind of the green room, right? Which everybody's been trying to do forever, by the way. But this single guest profile that you could serve up across the property to enable people to know the guests and understand their experience at the hotel. So the board basically set us off to go and accelerate that. And that's what we did through COVID. We increased our R&D by about 30% at that point in time. And we actually got kind of lucky because early in COVID, a lot of the mobile solutions we had, the guest-facing technologies we had were in demand. But we had them. We didn't have them because we knew it was going to happen. We just happened to have built those. And so today, coming out of COVID, just as these gentlemen talked about, there's a lot of demand for more ways to enable these guest experiences, and we're benefiting from that.
Can I make a point on that? I think that's absolutely right. And I think I want to give you an example of some of the things that we are going through right now, actually last week. I completely agree with you. It is about giving the technology. We all have this technology straight in our face every day, right? Every minute, every day, most of the time. But the challenge is to make it there, but not in your face, right? It's got to be seamless, and it's got to help. The problem with technology is a lot of the time, actually, it's too in your face, and it sometimes doesn't work. So that's the challenge we all have to face, right?
I agree. And I think the biggest challenge when you put your technology in front of a guest, one, it's got to work and do all those things, but you cannot transfer your task for that guest experience onto your customer. As soon as I feel like I'm doing something on a piece of technology because they don't want to hire somebody to do it, or they don't care about it anymore, it's not important to them, that's where technology has become a problem for you.
So the reason I wanted to, it's a question actually almost to many. We walked into our room with the interior designer and the branding company, and these guys are French. And they're like, you know what, you can't, I said, well, we've got to educate, we've got a TV in the room. First of all, they didn't want a TV in the room, I insisted. I said, look, we need a TV in the room. Secondly, they said, you can't put any graphic on there. When people walk in the room, can't have a graphic. But I said, I want music, I want to put them in a mood, right? So what do you want to do? So we ended up with a compromise whereby we've got to figure out some kind of graphic that will be just subtly in the background without actually giving it this big graphical interface. Now, these are touches that, in a way, I understand because, and obviously we're doing it, the idea is it's a Zen space, the room. When I'm in the public areas, I want them to experience the public areas. But that room has to be your sanctuary, has to be your space to get away from it, your private space where you choose to do what you want to do. If you want to put the TV on, if you put the music on, that's your choice. But we want to give you a space where you can relax.
Matt, what's your perspective?
Well, I think that one of the things that technology has to do is, and I think the industry is really, the hotel industry hasn't done this well, is allow it to customize the guest experience. And I always use housekeeping as an example. You know, we know that people want the room clean, but we're still consistently not asking them at the time of arrival, you know, what time would you like it cleaned? And so if I'm on a Zoom call in the morning, you know, I don't want the room attendant knocking on the door. I mean, those are simple little things that we just haven't adapted. So I think the industry as a whole has to do more to this of getting it past just a task orientation or task solution to how do we customize and make the experience better, because the technology has to accelerate and has to accentuate what you're doing. Obviously, task management is something that, you know, we're all trying to shed by reducing the number of tasks being done. But I really think that technology has to become much more of a tool towards customization and personalization than it currently is, especially in our industry.
So I think how I would paraphrase what I think you're all saying is, how do you utilize high tech to facilitate high touch,
Right.
but not take the place of high touch or shift the ownership of high touch?
Exactly.
So if we look at, you know, I believe that adversity is a time of opportunity. It forces us to reinvent. It forces us to adapt. It forces us to think differently. How have you all done that? How have you transformed adversity into opportunity over the last 3 years, and how is that going to affect your businesses going forward? Don, let me start with you.
I kind of answered that, I think, earlier. You know, that's we took advantage in a defensive mode, and we came out of it. I mean, nobody knew during COVID that high-end, amenity-driven resorts, golf resorts, travel gaming, on and on, would do so well. And generally, they did. It was kind of a time of the haves and the have-nots. If you were a Hilton Garden Inn or a DoubleTree or whatever the case may be, business hotel, business city hotel, you struggled for a long time. If you're a resort that somebody could drive to and go do something, you did pretty well. So it was just an odd time. But I mean, we took advantage of it, kind of as I've said earlier. But I think that, and this is one of the things we talked about earlier as well, a lot of what has become table stakes technology-wise today, mobility, self-service, mobile check-in, these tools, if you will, they're here to stay now, right? These are going to sustain themselves for a very long time. So, but they've been around for a while too. But it kind of it took the pandemic to kind of force that change, and you know, now it's here to stay. I think.
Yeah, completely agree with you, and I think it comes back to the high touch, but you know, keeping that high touch point by facilitating it. I think if I think back to where we were, I think I outlined, you know, end of 19, everything was looking amazing. To, you know, April 2020, when you've got 5,000 rooms across Europe and there's 0 coming through the door, that's a shock, right? And we all went through it. We all went through the STR, forecasts. I think I had the best I heard at that point was 23. Worst I heard, I think, was 26 or 27. We hit 22, okay? The vaccine obviously facilitated that. It's come back with a vengeance, right? But it did nevertheless give us time to reflect. And I think it's the redefinition of the guest experience. It's understanding how technology gets into it. It's not really picking through that P&L and say, right, what do I really need? Where am I spending money in the right way for the right reasons, okay? So the whole unpicking of our business, which I think, will benefit the ones that chose to do that, as well as the consumer, ultimately. Because we've had the time to reflect. There's a lot of experience which we had time to bring to bear. And I think that it's the ones that do that and really think about how to deliver what the guests want, as simple as, what do I do when I walk into a hotel? What's my guest journey? And what are the tiny little touches that make a difference? Putting plug points where they need to be in a room. It's so simple, but we've got so many devices. But, how many times you go into a hotel room and can't find the plug points? They're not where you need them, right? So it's about that sort of thing. And then it's giving them experiences they didn't realize they wanted. And using your real estate to really understand what it is. I mean, our hotel is called Hotel Dame des Arts. It's in the left bank. We have curated 700 pieces of art that we've put in. Every single room will be a different piece of art. It's actually real art. It's going on my balance sheet. And we've got, a whole curation around that because that's where we are, right by Notre Dame, in the heart of the culture and artistic of Paris, heart of Paris. So it's that. It's celebrating the soul. And another example I give you is we're giving picnic baskets, because what do people do when they come to Paris? We're going to allow you to buy a picnic basket, walk to the Seine, which is a 3-minute walk, and have your picnic on the Seine. Fantastic. With a curated product mix of the best bakeries, the best chocolates, the best wine from the local area. That's an experience that they didn't know they wanted, but actually, wouldn't that be great? So stuff like that.
Matt, what's your perspective?
I'm going to take this from the associate experience, because I think the luxury hotel operator that's going to win is also going to win on the employee side of life. We've seen a tremendous labor shortage in the industry, and we've lost a tremendous amount of our workforce that just has not returned. Food and beverage throughout the United States is struggling across the board to find talent, to find people to come to work, and we're having to adapt to how the associates or the employees of the workforce want to now interact with us as an employer. It used to be you'd post a schedule and say, that's it. You can't change it unless you go through. We're now interacting through technology, through our HRIS system, the ability for employees to swap shift without management interference. And so I don't need to ask 3 people to get a Tuesday off if my colleague will switch my Tuesday and it doesn't create any onerous in California overtime or triggers anything like that. But that's how they want to work. We've had a lot of culinary employees that now we have to deal with on almost a TaskRabbit type of basis, where they only want to work 2 or 3 days a week. But they have talent, they have quality, and so finding that person, that opportunity. So we have to rapidly readjust and readapt to how we're interacting with our employees and finding great talent. I had interaction here at the hotel yesterday with 2 fabulous employees that, could have taken a really kind of unfortunate situation, but they made it really good. I mean, the outcome is we're always hiring for great talent, but now that talent is harder to find. The training and development of them, how we're interacting with them as an employer, is going to be tremendously important to anybody's success, because we are going to struggle as an industry with this talent gap for a long time, because I think the number of people exiting our industry is far outpacing the people that we're onboarding into the industry, And it goes beyond pay and it goes beyond benefits. And it's a cultural piece, but it's also how you begin to innovate, how you interact with them. And I think that's something we all have to pay attention to.
You know, one of the things that I think almost anybody will admit, we were not prepared for the ramifications of the pandemic. It has changed the definition of luxury. It has changed how one, from a hotelier's perspective, from an owner's perspective, from a technology perspective, from the guest experience perspective. So my question is, how do we prepare? How do we learn from this and prepare for the next? Because inevitably, there will be a next, whatever that next may be. And what have we learned from this? And how are you all incorporating those learnings into what you're doing, let's say, over the next decade, so we're not as vulnerable? Imshan, let me start with you on that one.
Do we ever learn? I mean, you just need to look back in history to say, do we ever learn? And I'm not sure we do. I think that's partly because it's always different every time. I do think it's a bit, flippant to say, because I think we do learn. I just don't think we learn fast enough and care enough to do what we do. And because it's always different, we always have to then think on our feet. And the truth is that, I think that it's almost, I'm at the risk of getting philosophical, these things are meant to test us and make us better, right? This has definitely done that. And again, everything we're talking about in terms of ultimately what the guest is going to get, experience, will be better because we've had time to reflect. And we've got more efficient. And we're treating our employees better because we need to. Because actually the business model was broken.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Sure, yeah.
100%. So all of these things have happened for good reason. Because they needed to. And this was the only thing that could really have done that. So I look at it and say, what can we learn? Just the same thing. Think on your feet and just keep innovating because focused on what it is that the customer wants. Because ultimately, in any industry, but particularly in hospitality, we're all about the customer, aren't we? Isn't that what it's all about?
Should be. Should be. Matt?
My viewpoint is I think we've demonstrated how continually resilient we are. I mean, for us to come through the last 3 years and to be talking about how we are now moving forward, this could have been far more devastating on us as an industry than I think we've demonstrated our resiliency in being able to adapt to these types of situations. I think the hazard is not taking the learnings from this and implementing them in how we move forward, and just trying to do a light switch approach where the lights are off, now let's just turn them back on, and going back. And I challenge us as luxury hotel operators to redefine what the next level of luxury is, because we all have to have great design, we all have to curate great experiences, we all have to have great facilities, but we also have to adapt to these changes that the customer has identified. This ability to connect and interact with people. I think human interaction is critical, but how we deliver services, we've talked about it, but how we view and how we're rated and how the customers evaluate us now. No one's expecting us to be, any restaurant you go to, that they're closed on a Monday and Tuesday because of the staffing. But what you want is that when they're open Wednesday through Sunday, it to be a good experience. And if you dilute your experience by trying to over-deliver services that you can't maintain the quality of, I think you're making a grave mistake. And, challenge some of the ratings agencies that evaluate us based upon that we are facing real-world challenges. We've made a decision that if we can't deliver it to the level that we expect and our customers expect, we're not going to be open. So our luxury restaurant is open 5 days a week because that's what we can deliver to the level. I could open at 7 and I would dilute the entire experience, and that's not what the customer wants. They don't want to come in and pay $200 for a meal and have a less than adequate experience. They'll pay for it and have a great experience, but the minute you begin to dilute your service delivery or their expectations on it, I think you're only damaging your product and you're damaging your brand and your reputation going forward.
Agreed.
I don't know that there's necessarily an answer for that. I think the best we can do in my business is continue to innovate, think of what the future might look like, where can we add value, listen to people like these gentlemen, you all, about the things you want and need to move your business forward. I think the best you guys could do is continue to evolve your brands and your products and so forth, try to compete with these folks out here. And at the end of the day, we talked about this earlier as well. This is an industry, it's fascinating to me when I talk about it and think about it, that no matter what we've been through, go back to the housing crisis, devastating economy, look at what happened through COVID, this industry just continues to evolve. Look at Las Vegas. If anybody is kind of a poster child for evolution of an industry, if you will, look at what they've done over the years. Family friendly, not family friendly, gaming heavy. Now it's about entertainment and so forth. I think we just continue to push forward and we figure it out. This industry's always figured it out. It's always just gotten better. These guys have always met the demands of their guests. They've always been able to compete. It just changes. It just changes over time. I think the best we can do is do the best we can do.
So, last question before we take questions from the audience. The guests' expectations have changed. And one of the points that you all brought up before is that the guest has been very forgiving coming out of COVID. I'm not sure that the guests will continue to be forgiving. How do we make sure that we exceed their expectations, number one? Number two, understand what they are and lead those expectations. And technology plays a critical role in that.
It could, or it could not. I think everybody's threshold for implementing technology is very, very different. We said it a bit earlier. I think it has to augment the experience. There has to be a relief valve to it. You can't force everybody to go to a piece of technology unless you give them an outlet to go do something else that they're comfortable with. In other words, don't make everybody check into the hotel through an app. Make sure you give them a front desk clerk or a person there to go and talk to and so on. I think that's super important. These guys are probably better equipped to answer that. But my job, my company's job, is really to provide those tools so that where technology does fit, we want to be prepared to provide that. But it has a place. But it's not the answer to everything. It's a component of a human factor, the human touch, the experience that two people have when they're talking together, trying to work out a problem, that sort of a thing.
Well, I think that we have reached the end where the guest is no longer forgiving anymore. Like I mentioned previously, if you're going to deliver experience or deliver something to them, they want it to be the quality that they expect of your brand, of what they're paying for in that regards. I think going forward, though, we continue to have to be building on these experiences. You could no longer the time frame for allowing your product to become stale or to become out of touch, whether it's technology. If you have to call to get a folio sent to you because you didn't get it for some reason, that's a miss, because the technology makes it easier and it's simpler for that. So there are technology solutions that really make it easier on the customer. But I think we have to be focused on the fact that we have to plan better. We have to be implementing sooner because of supply chain and cost disruptions. But the customer, they want to pay more. They're willing to pay more. But the tolerance for inferior product today that's expired.
I think the days of forgiveness when the rates went 30% higher across the board, we all are accepting because we are an inflation hedge as a business. We are able to move our rates in a way that very few people are, in the speed that they do and in the way that they go up. So the minute you're charging, I don't know, and you're in Paris, $700 a night for something that you were charging $400 a night not so long ago, automatically you're raising the bar, okay? And therefore we have to step up to that challenge continually. I think that giving them what they really need when they need it in the manner in which you need it is critical. It's table stakes, okay? Then it's about giving them, I said it earlier, giving them things that they didn't expect, okay? And then it's also, it's all part of the whole redefinition. We talk about pleasure, giving them a space and an offer, both physically in the property as well as financially, to make it worth their while, to allow them to go do that, right? Then it's another question about, another example is the spirit of generosity. I think Bill mentioned that. That's really important, random acts. I think the other thing that is something that part of our redefinition, and I think I keep referring to the opposite property, but it's in the left bank, it was where all the scandal and the culture of French literature and all that stuff happened. So we have gone the other way and said, you know what, one of our values is non-conformism. Because I think what part of the redefinition of luxury is being who you really want to be and not making excuses for it. And we want to create a space where you can come and do that. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you wear, it doesn't matter what you think. As long as you're respectful and kind and open, and we've got a place for you. And I think that is critical.
Thank you. Now, I believe we may have a question or two from the audience. Okay. So, final word. Please. I'm sorry.
My question is probably for Don. How are you guys incorporating social media technology into today? Because you led the conference with post us on LinkedIn, right? So we have a saying at our company, if it doesn't happen on social media, did it happen?
So it's incorporating social media in today's technology, because our saying at our company is, if it didn't happen on social media, did it happen? We led the conference with post Inspire 2022 on LinkedIn. Why? So
I am so happy that he brought that mic to you so you could repeat the question to give me time to think of how I was going to answer that question. Because we've done a terrible job of that. So, but one of the things, we just talked about this literally last Tuesday, Wednesday. We have this collection of products. We generally are driving towards this common guest profile where we serve it up around the property in real time about the guest experience and all that. And we did talk about the fact that we had a very big gap in our social media integration, which I think is all a part of that. So for us, that's something that we need to work on, incorporate into our products. It's an activity that we're going to take up more prominently down the road. But we don't do a good job with that today. It's built into a few of our solutions, but it's not prominent enough in the overall stack, if you will. It's a good call out.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much for your insights. Very much appreciated.